Hello and welcome. I've been getting a lot of requests for tutorials on how to do things in Fantasy Grounds, specifically in ADnD 2nd Edition where I run most of my games. So I thought I would start with the basics. Today we're going to go into the character sheet on the player's perspective and just go over each tab, and I will break each tab up into its own video. So let's get started. So when you first come in, you are going to see this little campaign setup window and a character selection window, which, unless your DM has already set up something for you, should be blank. So for the purposes of this video, we will assume that you have done no work whatsoever so far. On the campaign setup screen, you can just hit next, and it should bring you to the module load screen. You can either click on modules, which will bring up all of the modules, and you can pick them individually. You can click 2e core rules, which will bring up just the core books you need on the player's side. If I remember correctly, this should just be the player's handbook. We'll test that in a second. Or you can pick 2e rules, class, race books. This will bring up the whole shebang. It'll bring up all the handbooks that your DM has available for you, and it will bring up any other books, class books, race books, so on. I would not recommend hitting this unless you literally have no idea what you're going to pick and you just want to look at all the books. In that case, I would recommend using modules, because it is going to take some time. If you click this, it will bog down the system quite a bit. And just to kind of double back, you do not need to own any of the modules as a player. In fact, even if you do, you will not be able to access them unless you are the DM. The DM will have what's available for you. Alright, so let's get into this. For the purpose of this, we are just going to click 2e core rules and do a very basic character. So when we click that, it's going to take a moment to load up. And there you go. So you should see this window pop up. If we had clicked the rules, class, and race books, it would give us a comprehensive list of all of the books that it loaded. In this case, players only need the player's handbook. Close that and close this. Now, if we go up here to books, you can see the player's handbook is available. You click on it, it will bring up the reference manual for the player's handbook. And in here, you can go through and read the various sections pertaining to character creation and any other general rule set information that you need to know. But that is beyond the scope of this video, so right now we're just going to go into character creation. If we go ahead and click on the green circle down here with the plus sign, it is going to bring up a blank character sheet for us. Now we can name our character. Today we are going to make a fighter. Now, we could go through the records here and pull up PCs, classes, and races, and all of that, but in 2e, everything is integrated into the character sheet itself. So if you simply start by clicking on anywhere that it says click to select, we'll go to race for instance, it will bring up all of the race options that are available in whatever modules you have loaded. Now we only have the player's handbook loaded, so we only see the basic races. The same can be true for kits. There will be none because the player's handbook does not have kits. And the class and level will bring up any classes that are available in the modules that you have loaded. First thing we want to do though is roll our stats. So we are just going to do some basic stat rolling. If you left click on the dice down at the bottom here and right click, you can add dice to your hand and then just simply drop them in the chat log to roll them. Or you can right click on the dice and it will tell you how many to grab. You could do 3 times and it will grab 3 dice. You can also type in a string, roll space 3d6, and it will roll 3d6. We are just going to do the right click method to finish off our character sheet here. Oop, grab too many. drop them on the desktop and it will reset the dice without rolling them. As long as you do not drop them in the chat log, it will not roll the dice. Now, next thing we want to do is add these ability scores, and to do that, there's a safety mechanism in 2e rule set that you cannot adjust the stats simply by clicking on them like other rule sets. You will commonly see these gear icons throughout the character sheet. Clicking on that will bring up the editorial window. You can simply type in the number, or you can drag these numbers and replace the numbers that are there. For the purposes of this, we are just going to go with the basic rules as written and drag them in order as they were rolled. Your DM should tell you what your options are for the way you will roll your dice. We are going to keep it very basic for today. You can close that window now. You can see that all of the stats have been added, and all of the information regarding, or pertaining to those stats rather, have also been updated. Next thing we would like to do is add a race. In this instance, excuse me, I'm going to click on the click to select, bring up the races, and I'm going to use a dwarf because a dwarf has a bonus, and I want you to see what happens when you drop the race that has a racial bonus. So a dwarf has, scroll through here, they add a +1 to their constitution and a -1 to their charisma. So we should see that take effect. We have a 9 constitution and a 12 charisma. So if we grab the shield icon and drag it straight on to where it says click to select, you can see that our charisma went to 11 and our constitution increased to 10. You'll also notice in the chat log a bunch of traits and other things that have been added to include some actual effects here that dwarves get versus ogres and goblins and orcs and such. Now you notice that none of our saves have changed, and some other information like our max hit points and such have not changed because we currently have not selected a class. So that will be the next thing we do. We're going to close this window. We're going to click to select a class. If you want to know what any of these classes are, you can click on the shield on the left hand side and it will bring up that class. And there are other pieces of information you can click here. It'll bring up the table for the various associated story elements for those features. Obviously a dwarf cannot be an abjurer, so we are going to just stick with our goal of being a fighter. I'm going to click on fighter here, bring it up, just take a look at it. Must have a strength of 9. We meet that requirement. Races allowed are all. So a dwarf may be a fighter. And just like in the player's handbook itself, you can read through all of this. You don't need to go to the reference manual. It has literally everything you need to know about the class. But we're going to close this. We don't actually need that open. We can just drag and drop, since we know we want to be a fighter, right here into the class and level. You'll see that this little window opens up. You really don't need to do anything here unless your DM is allowing for a bonus experience based off your stats, which would be covered down in the class. You can click this box and it will incorporate a bonus experience up to 10%. We will go more into detail on this window in the level up section of this tutorial. I'm going to close this window, and you can see that the saves have all adjusted. Dwarves get a bonus to save, which is already included in the rule set itself, so you don't need to make any adjustments here. It will base it off your constitution whenever you need to make a roll. We don't have to worry about a kit because we're in the player's handbook. At first level, the rule set will, excuse me for my stuttering, the rule set will put you at max hit points at first level. Any level thereafter, it will roll for hit points. But you can see that all of our work here has been done. There really isn't anything else that we need to do here. You can type some notes in special movement, I typically like to put the squares or distance. So a 6 would need to be changed probably. I like to do 5-foot squares, and this number, if you're familiar with 2e, is based off the 1-inch squares. So if you took 6 times 5, it would be 30 feet. So just a little referential spot. This doesn't go anywhere. You can put also notes on special defenses in here. This is all purely for your information. And if you need to make rolls from here, let's say your DM says, I want you to make a strength roll. You can simply double click on the strength box and it will make a roll. It will also tell you what your target for success was, and it will tell you how much you succeeded by. This will help your DM in factoring in any bonuses or penalties, so you may or may not succeed based off this number. There's also other rollable boxes in here. Anytime you see this little kind of circular thing next to the stat or data node, you can double click on that box and it will roll. So if your DM says, I want you to make a open doors check, you can double click on the open doors box and it will make an open doors check. Now on this particular roll, let's say I'm going to edit my strength here. Let's say your strength was incredibly high, like 18 double lock. You notice that in parentheses here it says open magical doors. So if you were trying to bash through a old portal or something to that effect, you'll see that it rolls 2 dice. And 1 roll is for magic doors, and 1 is for regular doors. So you can see if we were trying to break through a magical barrier, we would have failed. But we would have succeeded at breaking open a regular door. Similarly, Ben Barslip Gates will also roll for you. Very good roll, we succeeded. And System Shock, various other rolls are all incorporated. So you don't need to worry about coming down here and grabbing percentile or anything like that. Another neat feature about the main tab is that you have the THAC0 box down here. This is great for combat maneuvers and other just random rolls that aren't necessarily going to be attack driven, but may still need some sort of hit roll just for information. You can double click that and it will not give a penalty, which is nice. Anything rolled from the actions tab may or may not have a penalty depending upon proficiencies, but we will get into that later. You can also roll base initiative from this area, and your surprise checks. It will tell you if you were surprised or not. And just like the abilities tab here, if you need to adjust any of these, you cannot adjust them from these boxes. You must click on the gear here. Now, a lot of this information will be something that the players cannot edit. The DM will usually have to edit these for you. And a lot of this information will be dependent upon other tabs, armor that you're wearing, and so on. So you really won't have to click this tab ever, as you won't be able to edit most of that information anyway. The last thing I'd like to go over on the main tab is the portrait. So if you click on the portrait box, it will open up the portrait selector, and you can just go through the bags here. We'll just pick something from the player's handbook itself. Oops, just single click on that, and you'll see the basic kind of portraits that the player's handbook comes with. We have a fighter, so we'll just pick the warrior basic here, and there you have it. Sometimes your DM might have a token for you, and they will drag that over here for you, but by and large, it's going to just default to whatever your portrait selection was. Another neat trick, which we will cover down in an actual gameplay, is if you had a map loaded where your token resides, you can double click on the token icon here and it will open that map for you. And that covers everything on the main tab. If you have any questions or comments, please post them in the comments below, and I will try to answer them if I can. Thank you for watching, and have a great weekend. Bye.